I never imagined that the most humiliating evening of my life would begin because someone thought I was the hotel maid. My name is Eleanor Hayes. I am 61 years old. I raised my son Nathan alone after losing my husband when Nathan was only 8. For more than 30 years I worked harder than anyone ever knew. I cleaned hotel rooms. I washed dishes. I folded towels until my hands cracked every winter. People only see the finished building. They never see the woman who carried the bricks. Nathan had asked me one favor before introducing me to his future in-laws. Mom, just be yourself. Do not try to impress anyone. I smiled. That would not be difficult. I had spent half my life pretending I was less than I really was. One simple dinner would change nothing. Or so I believed. The meeting was held inside the Grand Aurora Hotel in Manhattan, a 5-star property known for hosting celebrities, politicians, and billionaires. Nathan had chosen it because Isabella loved the Lakeview restaurant on the top floor. I drove there in my old silver Toyota. The security guard barely glanced at my car before directing me toward the employee entrance. I laughed quietly and parked anyway. Old habits die hard. I wore a navy blue dress that I had owned for nearly 10 years. No diamonds. No designer handbag. Only my wedding ring, which I still refused to remove. Inside the lobby everything sparkled. Crystal chandeliers reflected across polished marble floors. Fresh white orchids decorated every corner. Tourists stopped to take pictures while businessmen hurried toward the elevators. I looked around and smiled. Every detail reminded me of another lifetime. A young bellman approached me. "Good evening, ma'am. Are you here for the Reed family dinner?" Before I could answer, another woman interrupted him. She was elegant, perfectly dressed, and wearing enough jewelry to buy a small apartment. "You must be the hotel staff assigned to our table. Please carry these gift bags upstairs." She handed me 3 expensive shopping bags without waiting for an answer. For a second I simply stared at her. Then I recognized her. Sophia Reed. Isabella, mother. She had never seen my photograph. Nathan had. Suggested introducing everyone naturally. Apparently too naturally. I accepted the bags without saying a word. The bellman looked confused. I gave him a small smile, telling him silently not to interfere. Sometimes people reveal themselves when they believe no one important is watching. In the private dining room, Victor Reed stood beside the window drinking wine. Tall, confident, and loudly successful. The type of man who measured every person within seconds. Sophia walked in behind me. She pointed toward me casually. The staff finally arrived. Victor barely looked at my face. "About time. Put the bags over there, please." I placed them beside the table. Nathan entered a few seconds later with Isabella. His expression changed immediately. "Mom, you are here." Victor frowned. "Mom," the room became completely silent. Sophia blinked twice. "You mean, this is your mother?" Nathan nodded proudly. "Yes, this is Eleanor Hayes." The color slowly disappeared from Sophia's face. She forced a nervous laugh. "Oh my goodness. I am so sorry." I smiled politely. There is nothing to apologize for. Mistakes happen. But Victor did not apologize. Instead, he pulled out a chair and motioned toward the table. "Please sit." Dinner began with polite conversation. Nathan and Isabella talked about their wedding plans. Sophia described the florist she wanted. Victor explained why only the finest guests should receive invitations. I mostly listened. After the appetizers arrived, Victor turned toward me. "Mrs. Hayes, Nathan told us very little about your background. What line of work were you in?" "I recently retired. I spent many years in hospitality." He nodded without interest. "Hotel management, something like that." Sophia smiled. "Hospitality workers are wonderful people. Hard-working. Reliable. Of course, the income is never spectacular." I simply sipped my water. Nathan looked uncomfortable. Isabella quickly changed the subject. But Victor was not finished. "Retirement can be difficult these days, especially without significant investments. Do you still own your house?" Nathan finally spoke. "Dad, that is not really important." Victor smiled calmly. "Family finances always matter before marriage." "I am simply trying to understand the situation." His words sounded polite. His eyes were not. I had seen that look thousands of times. People trying to calculate another person's worth before deciding how much respect they deserved. I answered quietly. I have enough. That seemed to disappoint him. Enough usually means not much. Sophia laughed softly. Well, Nathan is still young. There is plenty of time to build wealth. Fortunately, Isabella has always been surrounded by successful people. Nathan placed his fork down. Mom worked incredibly hard to raise me. Victor smiled. I never questioned that. Hard work and success are not always the same thing. Nobody spoke for several seconds. The waiter refilled our glasses. Outside the windows, the lights of Manhattan shimmered across the river. The conversation continued. But something had already changed. Victor believed he understood exactly who I was. An ordinary retired woman with modest savings and an average life. He had no idea he was sitting inside a hotel that existed because of decisions I had made decades earlier. And he was only beginning to reveal how little character wealth could buy. Victor leaned back in his chair and gently swirled the wine inside his glass. He smiled the way successful men often do when they believe they are about to teach everyone else a lesson. I have always believed that marriage is both emotional and practical. Love is important, but contracts are more reliable than promises. Nathan looked at him. What do you mean? Victor folded his hands together. I already asked my attorney to prepare a prenuptial agreement. The room suddenly became quiet. Isabella lowered her eyes. She already knew. Nathan did not. A prenup is not the problem, Nathan said. The problem is preparing one before even talking to us. Victor shrugged. Responsible fathers plan ahead. Sophia nodded proudly. Exactly. Our family has spent decades building everything we own. We cannot be careless. Nathan answered calmly. Neither can we. Victor smiled again. With all due respect, your family is not exactly in the same financial category. His words landed heavily on the table. I noticed Isabella close her eyes for a brief moment. She hated confrontation. Nathan remained surprisingly calm. Can we at least see the document before discussing it? Victor reached into his leather briefcase. He placed a thick folder on the table. Every asset owned by Isabella before marriage remains exclusively hers. Every inheritance remains hers. Every future investment remains protected. Nathan turned several pages. His expression slowly darkened. This agreement says that anything purchased during the marriage using Isabella's income also belongs only to her. Victor nodded. Correct. Nathan looked back up. What about anything I earn? Victor answered immediately. That belongs to you. Simple. Nathan kept reading. Then he stopped. His eyebrows tightened. This section says that if we divorce because of financial disagreements, I cannot request any compensation regardless of circumstances. Victor smiled. Exactly. Business should never become emotional. Nathan closed the folder. This is not balanced. This assumes I am entering this marriage hoping to take advantage of Isabella. Victor calmly poured himself another glass of wine. Can you blame me for protecting my daughter? I finally spoke. Protection should never begin with suspicion. Victor looked at me for the first time in several minutes. Mrs. Hayes, please do not misunderstand. This is simply how wealthy families operate. I smiled politely. Not all wealthy families. He chuckled. Forgive me. I forgot. You probably have not had much experience around people at this level. Nathan immediately interrupted. Enough. Victor ignored him. Let me finish. Experience matters. Families from different backgrounds often misunderstand each other. That is why expectations should be perfectly clear. Sophia leaned toward Isabella. Sweetheart, you know your father only wants the best for you. Isabella quietly nodded. I know. Nathan looked disappointed. You already agreed to this, she answered honestly. I did not know every detail. Dad said it was standard. Nathan pushed the folder away. This is not standard. This is insulting. Victor folded his arms. Only if someone has something to hide. Nathan laughed bitterly. You think I want your money? Victor answered without hesitation. I think money changes people. I have seen it too many times. I watched the exchange carefully. Not because I was angry. Because I recognized fear hiding beneath arrogance. Men like Victor rarely trusted others. Usually because they trusted money more than character. Dinner continued, but no one enjoyed the food anymore. The steaks arrived perfectly cooked. No one touched them. Sophia attempted to lighten the mood. Perhaps after the wedding everyone can vacation together in Europe. Victor smiled. Excellent idea. Although we may need to choose destinations carefully. Not everyone appreciates luxury. Nathan slowly stood up. I have listened politely all evening. Now I need to ask one question. Victor nodded confidently. Go ahead. Nathan looked directly into his eyes. If my mother were wealthy, would you still speak to her this way? Victor laughed. That is a hypothetical question. Answer it anyway. Victor took another sip of wine. Honestly, probably not. Because successful people usually understand how the world works. The silence that followed felt heavier than before. Nathan clenched his jaw. My mother understands the world better than anyone I know. Victor smiled with visible impatience. Nathan, you love your mother. That is admirable. But love often clouds judgment. Life is measured by results. Not sacrifice. Not effort. Results. I quietly reached across the table and placed my hand on Nathan's arm. Sit down. He looked at me. Mom, please. Seat. Reluctantly he obeyed. Victor seemed satisfied. He believed he had one. He had no idea that every word spoken tonight was about to become the biggest mistake of his life. Outside the private dining room, several executives walked through the hallway. One of them suddenly stopped. He looked through the glass wall. His eyes widened instantly. Without saying another word, he changed direction and began walking quickly toward our table. I recognized him immediately. Benjamin Carter, Chief Executive Officer of Aurora Hospitality Group, the man who had managed my company for nearly 15 years. He opened the dining room door. The moment he saw me, he smiled with genuine respect. And before anyone could say a single word, he slightly bowed his head. Good evening, Mrs. Hayes. Why did no one tell me you were here? The entire room became silent. Benjamin Carter stood beside the table with genuine respect on his face. Good evening, Mrs. Hayes. I hope everything has been perfect tonight. I smiled. It has certainly been memorable. Benjamin noticed the strange expressions around the table. His smile slowly disappeared. Is everything all right? Before I could answer, Victor stood up confidently. Mr. Carter. What an unexpected honor. Victor Reed. We met once at the Chamber of Commerce dinner. Benjamin looked at him politely. I remember. Good evening. Victor immediately reached out to shake his hand. Benjamin accepted for only a second before turning back toward me. Mrs. Hayes. If I had known you were coming, I would have welcomed you personally. Nathan looked from Benjamin to me. Mom, you know the CEO? I smiled softly. We have worked together for many years. Benjamin laughed. Work together, that is one way to describe it. Victor forced a smile. Mrs. Hayes mentioned she worked in hospitality after all. Benjamin looked genuinely confused. Worked? She built the company. The words seemed to stop time. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Sophia stared at Benjamin as if she had misunderstood. Excuse me. Benjamin looked around the table. You all know Mrs. Hayes founded Aurora Hospitality Group, right? No one answered. Benjamin slowly looked back at me. You never told them? I shook my head. It never seemed necessary. Victor frowned. There must be some misunderstanding. Aurora Hospitality is worth billions. Benjamin nodded. Correct. Victor laughed awkwardly. Surely you mean she was one of the early employees? Benjamin smiled politely. No. I mean she started the company with one small roadside motel 34 years ago. Nathan slowly turned toward me. Is that true? I met my son's eyes. Yes. His mouth opened slightly. Why didn't you ever tell me? Because I wanted you to become your own man. Not the son of a wealthy woman. Benjamin folded his hands. Mrs. Hayes stepped away from daily operations years ago. She dislikes attention. Most guests never realize the founder occasionally visits our hotels without announcing herself. Sophia whispered. Founder. Victor was still trying to process everything. No. The founder sold the company years ago. Benjamin nodded. She sold operational control, not ownership. Mrs. Hayes remains our largest shareholder. Every major decision still requires her approval. The silence became almost painful. Nathan leaned back in his chair. All these years, you drove that old Toyota. You lived in the same small house. You never changed anything. I smiled. Why would I? The car still runs. The The house still feels like home. Money changes many things. It never changed what I needed. Benjamin looked at the untouched dinner. Mrs. Hayes, has someone made you uncomfortable tonight? His voice remained calm. But everyone at the table understood the question carried weight. Before I could answer, Sophia suddenly spoke. No, not at all. We were having a wonderful evening. Benjamin glanced toward me. Mrs. Hayes, I answered honestly. There were misunderstandings. Benjamin understood immediately. He had worked with me long enough to recognize that word. Misunderstandings meant someone had crossed a line. Victor finally cleared his throat. Mrs. Hayes, if I said anything inappropriate earlier, I assure you. I gently interrupted. There is no need. The evening has already been educational. Benjamin looked confused. Educational, I nodded. I learned exactly how some people measure another human being's value. Nobody spoke. Benjamin slowly looked from Victor to Sophia. Then to Nathan. Finally back to me. Would you like me to arrange another private dining room, perhaps somewhere quieter? I smiled. No. Please continue your evening. We are almost finished. Benjamin nodded respectfully. As you wish. Then something happened that made Victor lose the last bit of confidence he had. Benjamin stepped slightly backward, placed one hand over his chest, and bowed his head. Not deeply, just enough to show sincere respect. Thank you again. For everything you built. Without your courage, none of us would be here today. Several hotel managers standing outside the dining room copied the gesture immediately. Every employee visible through the glass lowered their heads as Mrs. Hayes passed into their view. Victor slowly looked. Through the windows. Dozens of staff members. Managers. Executives. Each one silently acknowledging the woman he had spent the evening treating like an ordinary retiree. Benjamin excused himself and quietly left the room. The door closed. Nobody touched their food. Nobody even looked at each other. Finally Nathan spoke. Mom, tell me the truth. Did you know this would happen? I shook my head. No. Benjamin was not supposed to be here tonight. Victor stared at the table, then quietly asked the question everyone else wanted answered. If you own this company, why did you let us believe otherwise? I looked directly into his eyes. Because I wanted to meet the family my son would marry into. Not the family that wanted something from me. The room fell completely silent again. Victor lowered his head for the first time that evening. He finally understood. The test he believed he had been giving had actually been his own. No one spoke for nearly a minute. The city lights outside continued shining as if nothing had happened. Inside the private dining room, everything had changed. Victor slowly pushed his wine glass aside. Mrs. Hayes, Eleanor, I owe you an apology. I raised one hand. Please, do not apologize because of what you learned. Apologize only if you truly regret what you believed before you learned it. His mouth closed. He had no answer. Sophia looked completely different now. The confidence that had filled her voice all evening was gone. She reached across the table. Mrs. Hayes, I made assumptions. They were unfair. I hope someday you can forgive me. I smiled gently. Forgiveness has never been difficult for me. Trust is another matter. Nathan quietly looked at me. Mom, I still cannot understand. Why did you never tell me you worked your entire life? You could have lived anywhere, done anything. Instead you chose a small house and an old car. Why? I looked at my son. Because I already had everything I wanted. You. He lowered his eyes. After your father died, I made him one promise. I promised our son would never grow up believing money made him better than anyone else. So I never treated you like the son of a billionaire. I treated you like the son of an honest man. Nathan could no longer speak. His eyes became red. I continued quietly. Your father started that first motel with me. People always tell my story as if I built everything alone. That is not true. He carried furniture, painted walls, fixed broken pipes, worked 16-hour days beside me. Aurora Hospitality was born from two exhausted people who refused to quit. Benjamin often tells investors about strategy, about vision, about growth. They never ask about the nights we slept on the office floor because we could not afford an apartment, or the winters when we shared one old heater between 3 rooms. Nobody applauds those parts. Victor listened without moving. I remembered every detail. The first motel had only 21 rooms. The roof leaked whenever it rained. Our laundry machines broke every month. Some weekends we cleaned every room ourselves because we could not afford staff. One Christmas we had exactly $43 left. Nathan was 6 years old. He wanted a bicycle. I bought him a used one from a garage sale. He smiled like I had given him the moon. That day I realized something. Children never remember price tags. They remember love. Sophia quietly wiped a tear from her eye. Victor stared at the table. Nathan finally spoke. I remember that bicycle. I thought it was brand new. I laughed softly. That is because your father polished every scratch before you woke up. For a moment everyone smiled. Even Victor. Then the smile disappeared. Because reality returned. Victor slowly asked, "How many hotels are there now?" 312. Cross 9 countries. Sophia inhaled sharply. And you still live in the same house? Yes. Victor looked genuinely confused. Why? Because success should improve your life, not replace it. The room became quiet again. Then Isabella spoke for the first time in several minutes. "Mrs. Hayes, can I ask you something? Of course. When my parents mistook you for hotel staff, why did you carry those shopping bags? You could have corrected us immediately." I looked at her kindly. Because carrying bags has never embarrassed me. I cleaned hotel bathrooms for years. I changed bed sheets. I vacuumed carpets. I served breakfast. There is dignity in honest work. If someone loses respect for you because they think you earn an hourly wage, that tells you everything about them. Nobody looked at Victor. Nobody needed to. He was already looking at himself. A soft knock interrupted the silence. The restaurant manager entered carefully. "Mrs. Hayes, I apologize for disturbing your dinner. There is one small matter requiring your approval." He handed me a leather folder. Victor watched with growing disbelief. I opened it. It contained architectural drawings. Our company planned to renovate another historic hotel in Boston. Benjamin wanted my final opinion. I studied the pages for less than a minute. The lobby is beautiful, but remove the marble staircase. Replace it with oak. People remember warmth, not luxury. The manager nodded immediately. "I will inform the board tonight." "Thank you, Mrs. Hayes." He accepted the folder and quietly left. Victor slowly whispered, "The board waits for your approval." "Sometimes," I answered. "Not because they have to, because they trust my judgment." Nathan smiled for the first time that evening. "Mom, you really built all this?" I shook my head. "No. Thousands of employees built this. I simply gave them a place where their work mattered." Victor looked at me with an expression completely different from before. There was no pride left. Only regret. He took a slow breath. "Mrs. Hayes, there is something you deserve to know. When I first saw your car tonight, I told Sophia that your family would probably become dependent on ours after the wedding. I thought Nathan would eventually ask us for money." I looked at him calmly. "Thank you for telling me the truth." He continued. "I have judged people my entire life by appearances. Tonight I discovered I have been measuring the wrong things." I was about to answer. Then Nathan's phone vibrated. He glanced at the screen. His expression changed instantly. Benjamin had sent him one simple message. "There is something your mother still has not told you." Nathan looked up at me. What else don't I know?" I quietly folded my hands. For the first time that evening, I looked uncertain. Nathan looked at me without blinking. "What else have you never told me?" I took a slow breath. For years I had imagined this conversation. It never seemed like the right time. Now I realized there would never be a perfect moment. Only an honest one. Benjamin should not have sent that message. This story belonged to me. Nathan nodded quietly. "Then tell me." I reached into my handbag. Inside was an old leather wallet. The edges were worn. The color had faded with time. I opened it carefully. Between several family photographs was a folded piece of paper. Yellow. Fragile. I placed it gently on the table. "Your father wrote this 6 days before he died." Nathan stared at it. "I have never seen that before." "No. Because I promised myself I would wait until you were ready." He slowly unfolded the paper. His father's handwriting appeared across the page. Still neat. Still steady. Nathan silently read every word. Halfway through his hands began to shake. He looked up at me. He knew. He knew he was dying. I nodded. Long before anyone else. Your father never wanted you to remember hospitals. He wanted you to remember fishing trips, baseball games, Saturday pancakes. That is why he smiled every day until the end. Nathan wiped his eyes. Why didn't you tell me? Because you were 8 years old. Children should not spend their childhood waiting for goodbye. Victor and Sophia remained completely silent. Even Isabella quietly cried beside Nathan. Nathan continued reading. Near the bottom of the letter, one sentence caught his attention. He stopped. What does this mean? He pointed to a single paragraph. If one day Nathan becomes the kind of man who values people more than money, tell him the truth about the promise. Nathan looked at me. What promise? I closed my eyes for a moment. The hardest promise I ever made. The night before your father died, he asked me to sell every luxury car we owned, every expensive watch, every unnecessary possession. He wanted our wealth to become invisible. Invisible, Nathan whispered. Why? Because he had grown up poor, then became rich too quickly. He watched old friends become strangers. He watched relatives fight over inheritance before anyone had even died. He was terrified that money would one day own our family instead of serving it. He held my hand in that hospital room and said something I have never forgotten. Raise our son to admire janitors before executives. If he learns that, everything else will take care of itself. Nathan quietly cried. I reached over and squeezed his hand. You never knew we had security following you during high school. His head lifted suddenly. What? Only from a distance. You never noticed. You walked to school like everyone else. Worked part-time in college. Shared an apartment with roommates. Applied for jobs without using my name. Every opportunity you earned honestly. Nathan stared at me. All those years, when I thought we could barely afford vacations, we could have traveled anywhere. Yes, when I worried about paying for college, you had already set everything aside. Yes, then why did you let me struggle? I smiled gently. Because struggle teaches lessons comfort never can. You learned responsibility, humility, gratitude. Those things cannot be inherited, only experienced. Victor slowly spoke. Mrs. Hayes, I judged your parenting tonight. I had no right. I looked at him calmly. No parent gets everything right. Neither did I. Nathan interrupted softly. No, Mom. You did. You really did. I became the man I am because you never allowed money to become my identity. For the first time that evening, he stood up. He walked around the table, then hugged me tightly. Not as a successful engineer, not as a grown man, but as the little boy who once believed a second-hand bicycle was the greatest gift in the world. Neither of us spoke. We did not need words. After several moments, Nathan stepped back. His eyes were still wet. There is one more thing. He looked toward Victor and Sophia. If this marriage requires me to prove my financial value, then maybe we should not have this marriage. Isabella immediately stood. No, please do not say that. She turned toward her parents. Dad, Mom, you have spent my entire life teaching me to marry someone successful. Tonight I finally understand something. Success is not measured by what someone owns. It is measured by who they become when nobody is watching. Sophia lowered her head. Victor closed his eyes. Neither of them interrupted. Isabella walked toward me. Mrs. Hayes, may I ask you one favor? Of course. Will you teach me how to become the kind of woman your husband hoped his son would marry? I looked into her eyes. For the first time that evening, I saw no fear. No pride. Only sincerity. I smiled. You already took the first step. She whispered. How? You asked to learn. Most people only ask to impress. At that exact moment, the private dining room door opened once again. Benjamin returned. This time his expression was serious. Mrs. Hayes, I apologize for interrupting, but there is someone downstairs insisting on seeing you. Says, he knew your husband, and he has been searching for you for 20 years. Benjamin stepped into the room and quietly closed the door behind him. Everyone looked toward him. Mrs. Hayes, the gentleman refused to leave. He said he has carried something for more than 20 years. He insisted it belongs to you. I frowned. Did he give his name? Benjamin nodded. Arthur Collins. For a moment the room disappeared around me. Arthur, I whispered. Nathan looked confused. You know him? I slowly nodded. He was your father's closest friend. I have not seen him since the funeral. Benjamin stepped aside. A tall elderly man entered the dining room. His hair was completely white now. He walked with a wooden cane. But his eyes were exactly the same. Kind. Honest. The moment he saw me he smiled. Hello, Ellie. Nobody had called me Ellie in over 20 years. Only 2 people ever did. My husband. And Arthur. I stood. Arthur. He opened his arms. We embraced quietly. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. When we finally stepped apart he looked at Nathan. You look exactly like your father. Nathan smiled politely. Thank you, sir. Arthur reached into his old leather briefcase. He carefully removed a small wooden box. The wood was scratched with age. The brass lock had turned dark over time. He placed it on the table. Your father asked me to keep this. Only until the day I believed you were ready. Nathan looked at me. You knew about this? I slowly shook my head. No. I thought everything he left had already been given to us. Arthur smiled gently. Not everything. Your father trusted me with one final responsibility. Nathan carefully opened the box. Inside were several photographs, an old pocket watch, a faded motel key, and a small cassette tape. Nathan picked it up. A cassette. Arthur nodded. Your father recorded it 3 nights before he died. He was too weak to write everything he wanted to say. The room became completely silent. Benjamin quietly signaled the restaurant staff. A few minutes later they brought an old cassette player from the hotel's historical display room. Nathan carefully inserted the tape. He pressed play. Static filled the room. Then a familiar voice appeared. Soft, weak, but unmistakable. Hello, buddy. If you are hearing this, it means you have grown into a man. Nathan immediately covered his mouth. His father's voice had been gone for more than 20 years. Now it filled the room once again. I wish I could tell you this in person, but life had different plans. If your mother waited this long, then she made the right decision. She always does. Nathan smiled through tears. The recording continued. Soon, people will tell you success means making more money every year. They are wrong. Success is becoming the person your family feels safe calling at 2 in the morning. Success is having children who hug you because they want to, not because they need something. Success is sleeping peacefully because nobody cried themselves to sleep because of your decisions. Victor slowly lowered his head. Every sentence struck him deeply. The recording continued. One day you may inherit more money than you can imagine. That day comes. Remember something. Money is a terrible master, but a wonderful servant. Use it to lift people, never to measure them. Nathan quietly cried. The tape continued for another minute. Then his father laughed softly. There is one last thing. If you ever meet a man who judges your mother by her clothes or her car, smile, because he has already told you everything you need to know about him. The tape clicked. Silence. No one moved. Victor slowly removed his glasses. His hands were trembling. Sophia quietly cried without trying to hide it. Arthur looked toward me. He wanted Nathan to hear those words when he became a husband, not before. I whispered. He chose the perfect moment. Arthur smiled. Your husband always had good timing. Nathan stood up. He walked toward Arthur. Without saying a word he hugged the old man tightly. Thank you for keeping this safe. Arthur placed one hand on Nathan's shoulder. Your father never worried about leaving his business. He worried about leaving his family. Tonight, I think he would finally be at peace. Benjamin quietly cleared his throat. Mrs. Hayes, there is something else. Arthur asked to meet me before coming upstairs. He showed me another document. Arthur nodded. That's right. There is one more surprise. He reached into his briefcase again. This time he removed a sealed envelope. Across the front were only 6 handwritten words. Open only after the right dinner. Nathan looked at me. The right dinner. Arthur smiled. Your father never explained. He simply said, one evening the truth will reveal every heart around the table. When that happens, open it. I slowly picked up the envelope. After more than 20 years, the seal remained untouched. I looked around the room. At Nathan. At Isabella. Victor. At Sophia. Then I carefully broke the seal. Inside was a single sheet of paper. I unfolded it. My eyes widened immediately. I read the first line, then looked directly at Victor. The room suddenly felt much colder. Nathan immediately noticed my expression. What does it say? I slowly lowered the paper. Your father predicted this night almost perfectly. No one spoke. The paper trembled slightly in my hands. Nathan looked at me with concern. What did Dad write? I slowly looked at Arthur. Did you ever read this? Arthur immediately shook his head. Never. He sealed it in front of me. He made me promise I would never open it. Only you. Only after what he called the right dinner. I nodded. Then I looked back at the letter. Your father wrote this 21 years ago. Nathan whispered. Please, read it. I took a deep breath. Then began reading aloud. If you are reading this, someone has already judged our family before knowing our hearts. Do not be angry. People reveal themselves long before they reveal the truth. Simply give them enough time. Victor slowly lowered his eyes. Every sentence felt directed at him. I continued. One day you will marry. Do not choose a wife because her family is wealthy. Do not reject a woman because her family is poor. Watch how people treat those they believe cannot help them. That is their true character. The room remained completely silent. I continued reading. If her family respects your mother before knowing who she is, treasure them. If they insult her before knowing her story, do not hate them. Instead, ask whether they are willing to change after learning the truth. Because every person deserves one opportunity to become better. I stopped for a second. Victor slowly closed his eyes. Sophia quietly reached for his hand. He did not move. Nathan looked at me. Please continue. I read the next paragraph. If the man sitting across from you values pride more than kindness, give him one chance to choose differently. Only one. After that, believe his actions, not his apology. I folded the paper for a moment. Victor finally stood. His chair slid backward across the wooden floor. Everyone looked toward him. His voice was no longer proud. It was quiet, broken. Mrs. Hayes, may I say something? I nodded. Go ahead. Victor looked directly at Nathan first, then Isabella, finally at me. I have spent 40 years building companies, negotiating contracts, winning arguments. Tonight I realize I have lost something far more important. Respect. Not yours. My own. Nobody interrupted him. He continued. When I believed Eleanor was an ordinary retired woman, I looked down on her. When I discovered she was wealthier than I could ever become, I immediately wanted her approval. Those two versions of me disgust me equally. Sophia quietly began crying. Victor looked toward his wife. Sophia. For years we taught Isabella how to recognize successful people. We forgot to teach her how to recognize good people. She shook her head. We both forgot. Victor slowly turned back toward me. Mrs. Hayes, your husband offered me one opportunity. I would like to take it. I do not ask for forgiveness tonight. I have not earned it. But I ask for the chance to become someone worthy of it. I carefully studied his face. For the first time that evening, there was no performance. No pride. Only honesty. Arthur smiled faintly. Your husband would have liked that answer. Victor looked surprised. Really? Arthur nodded. He always believed people could change, if they were willing to face themselves first. Nathan quietly looked at Isabella. She squeezed his hand. Then she stood. Dad, there is something I need to say too. Victor nodded. Go ahead, sweetheart. I love you. I always will. But if Nathan and I build a family, it will not be based on fear, or status, or appearances. It will be built the way Mr. Hayes described, with kindness first, everything else second. Victor smiled sadly. You are right. I should have taught you that years ago. Nathan looked around the table, then picked up the prenuptial agreement. Everyone watched. Without saying a word, he slowly tore every page in half. Then again, and again. The sound of ripping paper echoed through the room. Victor did not stop him, and said, He reached into his briefcase, removed the only remaining copy, and tore it apart himself. No lawyers. No negotiations. No conditions. Only silence. Then Victor extended his hand toward Nathan. Not as a businessman. As a father. Nathan looked at him for several seconds, then accepted the handshake. Victor quietly said something no one expected. I would be honored if you still called me Dad one day. Nathan smiled. Respect has to be earned. Tonight, you finally started earning it. Victor nodded. Fair enough. Arthur looked at me and quietly laughed. Your husband would have enjoyed watching this. I smiled through tears. Yes, he would have. At that moment Benjamin entered once more, this time carrying a small velvet box. Mrs. Hayes, our archives found something after Arthur arrived. We believe it belongs to your family. I looked at the box. I had not seen it in decades. Slowly I opened it. Inside lay the original brass room key, from the very first motel my husband and I had ever owned. Attached to it was a tiny handwritten tag. The handwriting was unmistakable. Simply said, never forget where room 1 began. I held the old brass key in my hand. It was heavier than I remembered. Not because of its weight, because of everything it carried. Nathan looked at it carefully. Room 1. Was that really where everything began? I smiled. Yes. One tiny room. One broken coffee machine. One leaking roof. And 2 stubborn people who refused to quit. Arthur laughed softly. Your father used to say that motel had more dreams than furniture. Everyone smiled. Benjamin cleared his throat. Mrs. Hayes, the property still belongs to Aurora Hospitality. We preserved it exactly as it was. I slowly looked at him. You never demolished it. Benjamin shook his head. You instructed us never to. You said every company needs one place that reminds people how small greatness begins. Nathan looked surprised. Can we go there? I nodded. Tomorrow morning. The next day the 6 of us drove together. No luxury limousine. No security convoy. Just 2 ordinary cars traveling north. 3 hours later we arrived. The motel looked almost exactly the same. The paint had been restored. The old sign still stood beside the road. Aurora Motel. Since 1992. Nathan slowly stepped out of the car. This is where I grew up. I smiled. For the first 6 years of your life, you took your first steps right over there. I pointed toward the small office. Your father celebrated as if we had won the lottery. Arthur laughed. He bought ice cream for every guest that night, even though we could barely afford groceries. Nathan smiled through tears. I never knew. Benjamin unlocked the office door. Everything inside had been preserved. The old reception desk. The faded guest register. The coffee pot that always leaked. Nothing had changed. Nathan slowly touched the wooden counter. You really worked here every day. Sometimes 18 hours. Sometimes more. Victor quietly walked behind us. He looked around the tiny office. Compared with the luxury hotels he admired, this place was unbelievably simple. Yet somehow, it felt warmer. More alive. Sophia whispered. I cannot believe this became an international company. I answered quietly. Neither could the bank manager. He rejected our first 3 loan applications. Arthur laughed. Your husband kept every rejection letter. He framed the first one after opening the 10th hotel. Everyone laughed. Nathan looked around. Where is room 1? I raised the brass key. Come with me. We walked slowly down the narrow outdoor hallway. The numbers on each door remained exactly the same. 1, 2, 3. Finally we stopped. Room 1. My hands trembled slightly. After all these years, I unlocked the door. The room smelled of polished wood. Sunlight entered through the old curtains. The furniture was modest, exactly as it had been decades earlier. Nathan quietly walked inside. He looked around slowly. This room feels peaceful. I nodded. Your father designed it himself. He believed every guest deserved one night without worry. Benjamin pointed toward a small shelf. Mrs. Hayes, we never moved anything. Everything remains exactly where you left it. I walked toward the shelf. There sat an old family photograph. Nathan at 6 years old, sitting on his father's shoulders. All 3 of us laughing. Nathan picked up the picture. I have never seen this one. Your father kept it here. He said this motel reminded him why he worked. Not for buildings. For family. Victor quietly stood near the window. Then he noticed something. There was a framed sentence hanging on the wall. Simple black letters. Nothing decorative. He read it aloud. Guests may forget our rooms, but they must never forget how we made them feel. Benjamin smiled. That sentence became the first company value. Today, every employee memorizes it during training. Victor slowly turned toward me. Now I understand. You never built hotels. You built trust. I smiled. Hotels only happen to be the buildings. People are always the real business. Nathan continued exploring the room. Then suddenly he noticed a loose floorboard beside the bed. Mom, did this always move? I frowned. No. Benjamin looked surprised. Maintenance records never mentioned it. Nathan carefully knelt down. He lifted the wooden board. Beneath it was a small metal box. Everyone stared. Arthur whispered, I have never seen that before. Nathan slowly picked it up. The lock had rusted away years ago. He carefully opened it. Inside was only one envelope. Across the front, in his father's handwriting, were 7 simple words. For my first grandchild one day. Nathan froze. Isabella covered her mouth. I felt tears fill my eyes. Even Arthur stood speechless. Nathan carefully opened the envelope. Inside was another handwritten letter. He began reading silently. Halfway through, he suddenly started crying. Not quietly. Not politely. The kind of tears that come only when love reaches across time. He looked at Isabella. Then at me. Dad already wrote to children he would never meet. No one spoke. The room became completely still. A gentle breeze moved through the trees surrounding the old motel. It almost felt as though someone we loved had quietly returned home. Nathan held the final letter with both hands. The paper was old. The edges had turned yellow. But every word carried the warmth of a father who never stopped loving his family. He looked at Isabella. Then he began reading aloud. My dear grandchild, if you are hearing these words, it means life continued after I left. That alone makes me smile. I will never know your name. I will never hold your hand. I will never teach you how to ride a bicycle or throw a baseball. But I know one thing with complete certainty. You were born into a family built on love before wealth. Never forget that. Nathan paused. His voice trembled. Everyone in the room quietly listened. If one day someone tells you your value depends on money, smile. Because they have never met your grandmother. She taught me that character is built when nobody is watching. If you become even half the person she already is, your life will be extraordinary. I looked away for a moment. Tears slowly rolled down my face. Arthur gently placed one hand on my shoulder. Your husband never stopped believing in you. Not for a single day. Nathan continued reading. Your father will probably make mistakes. Forgive him. Your mother will worry too much. Hug her anyway. Families are not perfect. They simply choose each other over and over again. That is enough. The letter ended with one final sentence. Leave every room. Kinder than you found it. Nathan carefully folded the letter. Nobody spoke. There was nothing left to say. Some words are too complete to improve. 3 months later, the wedding took place. Not inside the largest ballroom. Not inside one of our luxury hotels. Nathan and Isabella chose the little garden beside the original Aurora Motel. The same place where everything had begun. Only close friends and family attended. No celebrities. No politicians. No business partners. Just people who truly mattered. Victor approached me before the ceremony. He looked different now. Less polished. More peaceful. He held a small envelope. Mrs. Hayes, I would like you to have this. I opened it. Inside was a donation receipt. $20 million. Every cent had been donated to scholarships for students whose parents worked in hotels, restaurants, and cleaning services. The program carried only one name. The Hayes Family Scholarship. I looked up. Victor smiled quietly. For the first time in my life, I wanted my money to impress nobody. Only help someone. I reached out and shook his hand. This time, it felt different. Not because he was rich. because he had finally become humble. Sophia hugged me tightly. Thank you. You changed our family. I smiled. No, you changed yourselves. That is much harder. A few minutes later the ceremony began. Nathan stood waiting beneath a small white arch. Isabella walked slowly toward him. No expensive orchestra. Only birds singing in the distance. Arthur served as the witness. Benjamin sat quietly in the last row with several longtime employees. None of them wore executive badges. Today they came simply as family. When the vows were finished the officiant smiled. You may kiss your bride. Applause filled the garden. Nathan looked toward me. Mom, will you come here for a moment? I walked forward. Confused. Nathan took my hand. Then Isabella took my other hand. Together they faced the guests. Nathan smiled. Everything we built begins with this woman. Not because she built hotels. Because she built people. Everyone stood. Not because anyone asked them to. Because respect had become impossible to keep seated. The applause continued. Longer than I had ever experienced. I looked toward the old motel. Room 1 stood quietly beneath the afternoon sun. Exactly where our dream had started. I whispered so softly that only I could hear. We did it. My love. We really did it. A gentle breeze moved through the trees. For just a moment, it almost felt like my husband was standing beside me. Smiling. The same smile that had carried us through every impossible day. Life had never been about becoming the richest family. It had always been about becoming the family others could trust. That was the only legacy worth leaving. As the celebration continued, Nathan walked over and handed me the old brass key to room 1. Keep it, he said. It belongs with you. I looked at the key, then placed it back into his hand. No. Every generation must remember where it began. Now it is your turn. He nodded. I knew he understood. As the sun slowly disappeared beyond the trees, children laughed across the garden. Friends embraced. Families shared stories. And I realized something beautiful. The greatest inheritance is never money. It is the example we leave behind. Thank you for spending your time with this story. If it touched your heart or reminded you of someone you love, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who believes that kindness still matters. Your support allows more stories like this to reach people who need them. Until next time, remember, character opens doors that money never can. And the richest life is the one filled with love, respect, and people who choose you even after they know your whole story. The end.